Okay, we'll start with this. In men's super bantamweight news, Sam Goodman breaks hands, but wins to stay on track for Naoya Inoue.
It's a recovery time for a broken hand.
Anywhere in between 3 to 6 weeks with surgery, roughly 2 months. Sam Goodman improved to 19-0 with 8 knockouts with a hard-fought unanimous decision victory over Thailand's Thakdana Rockman, I can't pronounce that, who lost for the first time and is now 25-1 with 15 KOs. The super bantamweight contender won via margins of 117-111, 117-113, and 119-109, but his manager, Pete Matrevsky, said after the fight, the Australian had broken his left hand in the 6th round. What that means for a proposed fight with Japanese icon Naoya Inoue remains to be seen. Inoue is likely to fight again beforehand anyway, against TJ Doheny, before facing Goodman, his mandatory challenger.
Sam doesn't want that fight.
I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I'm not here to beat around the bush. I'm not going to do that. Put simply, I don't really think Sam Goodman and his team want that Inoue fight, even though it's for the best money you can hope to get at super bantamweight. I think in the long term, what they really want is to fight for a vacant title, that if they delay it long enough, Inoue will move up to featherweight, the titles will go vacant, and Sam can fight for one of those titles. I don't think he wants to challenge Inoue.
I don't.
Goodman's latest was a good fight, possibly a little more taxing than he had planned, but it certainly made for an entertaining spectacle. There were indications that the tough visitor from Bangkok was ready for a fight in the opening exchanges, when he was made to miss with some hefty-looking swings. Goodman adopted a sophisticated approach, maintaining the distance between them and trying to dictate with his jab. Goodman's boxing was more conventional, but he was nailed by a swinging hook in the second before catching Wararot at the end of a long right hand with a minute left in the session in reply. After the third, Wararot danced and played to the crowd, and while he was having some success downstairs, he was finding Goodman difficult to hit clearly. There were some fast and fluid exchanges in the fourth, and again Wararot danced at its conclusion, but the better work had come from the Australian, who landed jabs, worked the body, and tucked up well when the return attacks came his way. The fifth was a good round for the favorite. Goodman caught Wararot on the end of jabs and right hands, and with the exception of an eye-catching right uppercut, he was increasingly taking control, and there existed signs that Wararot was slowing.
What it sounds like is Sam Goodman bargained for a keep busy fight, and he got an actual fight instead.
Goodman seemed to completely have the measure of Wararot in round 6, and was countering so effectively that Wararot became gun-shy. The Thai became reluctant to throw. Goodman then went on the attack, trying to force more mistakes. Wararot was still playing to the crowd after each round, but there was less enthusiasm behind his theatrics, and the signs were that Goodman was building a commanding lead. The visitor did, however, find another gear in the 8th when they slugged away on even terms. The 9th was unrelenting and fought at particularly close range, although the action was paused for the tape to be fastened around Wararot's glove. By the looks of it, like I said, it looks like Sam Goodman bargained for a keep busy fight, a tune-up fight, just
an easy one that turned out not to be so easy.
But ask yourself a question. If the priority is an Inoue fight, why would you roll the dice? Why would you gamble?
Fighters experience wear and tear, even in fights that they win. It's still physically taxing, so you're gonna jeopardize your shot at the big time to keep busy with some nobody from Thailand? Or is it because you have no intention of fighting Inoue, but you want to fight so you can make some money?
He doesn't want the Inoue fight. You know, he was there when Naoya Inoue had knocked out Luis Neri. He came into the ring post-fight, said he wants his shot only so that afterwards he could schedule this fight. Subsequently breaks his hand.
It's one of those actions speak louder than words kind of moments.
He was stern. He was stern to Inoue that he wanted his world title shot. Then he schedules this fight.
You put that on the back burner for this.
Risking losing your spot, losing your shot to Inoue, to some nobody, and if nothing else, risking injury, which he apparently suffered. He broke his hand, and you wonder if his team aren't going to play this to where he can't fight Inoue later on this year because of the broken hand. Oh, I know what the prognosis is.
3 to 6 weeks, roughly 2 months. So what's that? All of August, all of September, just in time to come back in either
October.
November, December to fight Inui.
I have the sneaking suspicion that that's not how this is going to play out. They're going to use the broken hand. They're going to use the hand injury to delay the Inui fight even further to save face. We can't fight you. He's still healing.
I'm okay with that.
Why?
Because then maybe Inui will fight MJ Akhmadaliev at the end of the year instead. He's already en route to finalize a deal with TJ Doheny, which we talked about. He's likely going to kill this guy quick.
I wouldn't be surprised if he stops him in the first round. Or maybe, to please the crowd and put on a show, he lets it go a few rounds, but he finishes him inside 6.
Inside the midway point.
Doesn't take no damage, and he is thereby able to go straight into an MJ Akhmadaliev fight, which for me and my money was always a better fight than a Sam Goodman fight. So this is kinda good news, or it could be.
They're saying that the Doheny fight is going to be for undisputed, that all the belts, including the WBA title, is going to be on the line. So I guess they haven't stripped him. Not yet. Do you think they worked something out?
Maybe they did. There are a lot of people that have taken to saying that Inui is ducking MJ Akhmadaliev by fighting TJ Doheny. I don't get the sense that these are big MJ Akhmadaliev fans or that they've seen him in action, because if they had, they'd know there's a strong chance Inui does to him what he does to everybody.
Strong chance he knocks him out.
And you're only saying Inui's ducking him because you've been waiting for something you can use. You've been waiting for something you could say, something disparaging about this fighter.
Why?
Because there are some Americans who are that xenophobic. They don't like the idea that a foreign fighter is ranked within the top 5, or that anyone might think that a foreign fighter is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. They're spiteful like that, petty like that, and they've been waiting for something they could say or something they could use against him. So they're using this, that he's ducking MJ.
Motherfucker, have you ever even seen MJ fight?
But whatever makes you feel better, whatever makes you feel real.
What's the deal?
Hopefully Sam Goodman's hand is so busted up, we get an MJ fight at the end of the year instead of a Goodman fight. Hopefully.
So we can watch these guys not stick to the story for the 100th time.
They never do. Men's welterweight news ahead of Jaron Ennis' Matchroom debut. Philly long past its fighting prime as Jaron Ennis enters his. The Spectrum closed on October 31st in 2009. The final fight card at the Blue Horizon came on June 4th the following year. Jaron Boots Ennis was only 12 years old when Philadelphia's 2 most iconic boxing venues exited the game. Poor kid, never had a chance. Ennis, who headlines in Philly, above the club show level for the first time in his career this Saturday, facing substitute opponent David Avanesyan atop a DAZN-streamed card at the Wells Fargo Center, the 21,000-seat arena that took over the Spectrum as the home of the NHL's Flyers and the NBA's 76ers in 1996, may well prove to be Philadelphia's next great boxer, but he'll never get to shine at a time when Philly was truly Philly.
Rain on the kids' parade, why don't you?
Ask local boxing historians what the golden age of Philadelphia boxing was, and assuming they aren't going to reach back to Jack Dempsey fighting Gene Tooney in front of 120,000 fans at the Sesquicentennial Stadium in 1926, they'll largely isolate 2 periods. One kicked off on September 30th of 1969, when a then 22-year-old Russell Peltz promoted his first show at the Blue Horizon, igniting a run that led to Peltz being hired as the Spectrum's director of boxing in 1973, and to many of the biggest stars in the sport waging war in South Philly. Locals Briscoe, Matthew Saad Muhammad, Jeff Chandler, Tyrone Everett, and more packed the Spectrum, and future Hall of Famers from outside of Philly, including Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, Bobby Chacon, engaged in sanctioned violence there as well. And it certainly didn't hurt Philly's reputation as a top boxing town in the 70s, that even though he hadn't fought in Philadelphia since 1968, heavyweight Smokin' Joe Frazier called the city home, as did the most famous fictional heavyweight champion ever, Rocky Balboa. That golden age petered out as the decade came to a close, thanks to the combination of local cable network Prism, which launched in '76 and aired Spectrum events, providing a cheaper alternative to buying tickets to the fights, and Atlantic City casinos were paying site fees and luring away many of the big bouts that otherwise would have landed in the city of Philadelphia. But another golden age followed not too long after. In 1986, USA Network's Tuesday Night Fights aired one of Peltz's Cards from the Blue. The gist of it is, Philly used to be more of a fight town than it is here today. It's not what it used to be. Nothing really is. And now Philly's best hope is Jaron Boots Ennis, a pound-for-pound level talent who, at age 27, is 31-0 with 28 KOs, but hasn't been able to convince many serious contenders to get in the ring with him so he can prove his worth. 9 of his first 18 fights were in Philly, but he hasn't fought there since headlining a showbox card at the 2300 Arena, formerly ECW Arena, in November of 2018. For his last fight, a Showtime main event, 1 year ago, from the smaller room at a boardwalk hall in Atlantic City, a passionate crowd of Philly fans made the hour or so drive to the Jersey Shore, filling the 3,200-seat venue nicely. Ennis has all the pugilistic gifts you could ask for in a reasonably fan-friendly style, especially in that last fight against the very aggressive Roman Villa. And the crowd size Saturday for his Matchroom boxing debut will go a long way towards telling us whether or not, with his likable but low-key personality, Boots is gaining steam in his hometown. When we do hear the Wells Fargo Center attendance numbers, whatever they are, the old school Pelts will be skeptical. The arenas these days have a reputation for discounting tickets because they want to get bodies inside, make money on concessions, Pelt said. At the Blue Horizon, just to stay clear of the fire marshal, we actually used to reduce the amount of people that were officially in the building. But I know that the figures are usually inflated today. You never know who's really paying and who's being comped.
Russell Peltz, veteran of the game, has his skepticism. In truth, I don't blame him. Boxing in America isn't what it used to be. I say it all the time. But this is encouraging.
This is good. They seem to be getting a good turnout for Jaron Ennis' homecoming fight, his return to the city of brotherly love.
Some people are happy about it, some people aren't. John Einrenhofer,
attorney at law and a member of the Transnational Boxing Board, he said, Jaron Ennis is not advancing in his career fighting David Avanesyan on DAZN.
Why not?
As stated, some people are enthusiastic about Boots' return to the city of brotherly love, where some are not. John Einrenhofer is one who is not, but I don't know what he expects Boots to be doing. What would you prefer?
You know what he would have preferred.
That he would have went to the PBC instead of Matchroom, the PBC, who, if they're lucky, will do a grand total of 6 to 7 shows this year.
It's down 29 shows from the 36 shows they used to do back when they had Fox and Showtime giving them a budget.
If you're saying that this isn't a good move, this isn't a good look, and he's not advancing his career by doing this, what's the alternative? Go over there to the PBC, wait to fight on somebody's undercard at the Armory in Minneapolis?
Would that be better?
Then headlining your own show in your own city in front of your own fans to give the Philadelphia boxing scene the shot in the arm it sorely needs.
Just call a spade a spade. You wanted him to go to Heyman.
You wanted him to go to the PBC that barely has any fight dates, and what little fights they are doing, they're all behind a paywall. So if you end up buried on an undercard on one of those shows, there's only so many people that are going to see you.
Where DAZN is a global streaming platform that caters to several markets, not just this one.
It's another example of what I'm always telling you. These people would cut off their nose despite their face, pretend that this isn't good for Boots, that this isn't good for the city of Philadelphia, bringing big-time boxing back there.
No. Should be fighting on an undercard in Minneapolis at the Armory.
Boots takes care of business in front of a lot of people that leave happy. This could turn into a regular thing. American boxing has lost that grassroots feel, that hometown feel that we still see in the UK, but we don't see so much of here.
In the old days, a lot more fights used to happen on the East Coast than these days. These days, a lot more fights are happening on the West Coast or the Southwest.
Boots takes care of business this weekend at home, and I think he's going to. That could be the start of something very good.
But it seems like ever since Jaron Ennis paired up with Eddie Hearn, the enthusiasm that people had about him, they don't have it anymore.
They were much happier with him when he was boxing on undercards on Showtime every so often. They seemed much happier with him when he was affiliated with the PBC, even though he was never truly signed to them.
He was with Cameron Duncan. He was never an according to Hoyle Heyman fighter.
But they still looked at him as one, and they still felt that way. It seems like they liked things a lot better when he was being groomed to become the anti-Crawford. That while Crawford was in hot pursuit of Errol Spence, Jaron Ennis was supposed to be in hot pursuit of Crawford.
Which I never bought into.
Why not?
Jaron Ennis was consistently fighting in IBF eliminators. Terrence Crawford was not IBF champion.
So when you do an interview and you're telling everybody that what you want is a Terrence Crawford fight, seems very strange that you're not fighting in eliminators to get him in the ring. You're fighting in IBF eliminators. You're fighting in eliminators for a title he didn't even have.
I don't want to go all through that again.
The gist of it is that a year ago, 2 years ago, a lot of people online seemed more enthusiastic about Jaron Ennis when the narrative was that he would be the anti-Crawford.
Remember what I told you in my previous video about how the people in the American boxing scene, they want characters more than they want boxers. They want cinema.
Jaron Ennis is still the same Jaron Ennis now that he was before. It's the same guy. It's the same fighter. He's just not after Crawford. And because he's not really after Crawford, well, now you're not as interested. Because your whole thing was
using Boots as a shield.
What you figured is Errol Spence can delay the Crawford fight as long as he likes, and while he does, you'll put Boots on a pedestal as the anti-Crawford. Now, Errol's already gotten his ass kicked up and down the ring by Crawford. Boots is not affiliated with the PBC anymore. He's with Matchroom. Crawford moved up to 154. Boots is still at 147.
They're not on a collision course.
And suddenly, you're not as excited about Jaron Ennis anymore. You're not as excited about Boots now as you were a year ago.
So were you ever really a fan of him?
This is better. This is better than what they had him doing. Build your own following. Build your own grassroots following that's going to show up and show out and support you and pay to be there, pay to see you.
Instead of name dropping some other guy who you ain't going to fight for what is his name value, create your own.
Develop your own. Crawford is done at 147. Boots isn't. He wants to shoot for undisputed there.
You don't like that?
Bet you don't. But you guys, you boo birds, you ain't the kind of people that support anybody anyway. You just sit online all day crying.
Arguing.
So don't watch the fight. Who fucking needs you anyway?
You don't pay for shit.